I think when you make music, you want people to hear it and hear different things.
Tonight, I invite you to peer behind the gilded gates of hip-hop royalty and discover a revelation that few could have imagined. Jay-Z, the mogul, the maestro, the man whose empire stretches from Brooklyn's Marcy projects to billion-dollar boardrooms, has always kept his enemies close, or so we thought. But now, at the age of 56, with a legacy crowned by countless awards and immeasurable influence, Jay-Z has done something no one expected. He named the 5 people he hates the most. Imagine that. The man who turned betrayal into platinum records and backstabbing into billion-dollar verses is finally pulling back the velvet curtain on the faces that still haunt him when the lights go down. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know the stories of his rise. The street corner rhymes, the late nights in the studio, the Rockefeller dynasty, the fairy tale marriage with Beyoncé. Yet behind every line he ever spit was an unspoken truth, a list of grudges that stayed locked away like a precious secret. Until now. What does it mean when a king admits who he could never forgive? Tonight, we'll trace the path of these grudges. From rap battles that defined a generation to political spats that rattled the White House. Stay with me, dear viewers, as we unpack the bitterness that even $1 billion could not sweeten. Jay-Z, born Sean Corey Carter in 1969, is not just a name etched in hip-hop's Hall of Fame. He is the embodiment of an American dream stitched together with rhyme and hustle. From the dimly lit stairwells of Brooklyn's Marcy projects to boardrooms brimming with executives eager to catch a glimpse of his brilliance, Jay-Z has carved a path so audacious that even his harshest critics have had to bow to his empire. In the mid-1990s, as East Coast rap battled for its voice, Jay-Z's debut album, Reasonable Doubt, dropped like a thunderclap, announcing that a new kind of poet had arrived. The streets revered him, the industry respected him, and the fans fell at his lyrical feet. As the years rolled on, Jay-Z became more than just a rapper. With the Blueprint, the Black Album, and an endless parade of chart toppers, he transcended the corner battles and club bangers to become a storyteller of wealth, loyalty, betrayal, and survival. Rockefeller Records was more than a label. It was a family forged in music and ambition. He mentored young artists, brokered deals that left others scratching their heads, and built Roc Nation into a global entertainment powerhouse. In 2017, Billboard would one day declare him the greatest rapper of all time, and few would dare argue. But while the platinum plaques glittered on the walls, whispers always lingered in the shadows. Who did Jay-Z trust? Who did he fear? And, most importantly, who did he despise? The world saw him beside Beyoncé, the ultimate power couple, a fortress of love that survived storms of infidelity rumors and media frenzy. Together they raised 3 children, balancing stadium tours with family dinners, showing the world that royalty could be human too. Jay-Z, ever the businessman, expanded his kingdom into sports management, luxury spirits, and streaming services. He became hip-hop's first billionaire, a symbol that a boy from Brooklyn could own his masters, his businesses, and his destiny. Yet despite the smiles in glossy magazines and the verses dripping in bravado, those close to him knew that Jay-Z carried scars deeper than any diss track could reveal. Behind closed doors, there were moments when the polished mogul let slip glimpses of old wounds that never truly healed. An old friend turned traitor, a brother in music who crossed an unspoken line, a president whose words cut deeper than a bullet, a business partner who walked away with secrets. Even the closest alliances can curdle when egos collide and empires are at stake. For years the world speculated, who could possibly have the power to plant seeds of hate in Jay-Z's heart, and why did he keep it hidden for so long? Tonight, dear viewers, we begin to untangle the threads of this revelation. Because when Jay-Z himself chooses to utter the words, "the 5 I hate the most," it is not just gossip, it is a window into the complicated, glittering maze of loyalty and betrayal that defines not only his music, but the man himself. His peak was never just about Grammys or Billboard charts. It was about standing unchallenged while shadows lurked behind every platinum record. And now, the names he finally spoke aloud, threatened to shift how the world will remember him, not just as a mogul, but as a man who kept his enemies closer than we ever knew. It is here that the flawless image begins to fracture, revealing the fragile truths hidden beneath the diamond-studded crown. Jay-Z's path, so carefully paved with billion-dollar ventures and lyrical genius, was never free of betrayals and bruises. In the early 2000s, when hip-hop was ablaze with territorial battles and lyrical crossfires, one name emerged from the shadows to become Jay-Z's fiercest rival, Nas. Their feud was more than just rap bravado. It was a cultural battlefield. Diss tracks flew like arrows dipped in poison. Ether and Takeover became anthems for fans who picked sides as if it were a civil war. For a man who built an empire on trust and loyalty, Nas's barbs were salt poured into old wounds. Though they reconciled publicly, the tension simmered for years, a reminder that some wounds never truly close. Then there was Kanye West, the golden child Jay-Z once cradled under Rockefeller's wings. Kanye, with his genius and volatility, embodied both promise and peril. Their creative partnership brought forth masterpieces, but behind the studio glass, cracks formed. Kanye's erratic behavior, public rants, and a stinging accusation that Jay-Z abandoned him during personal crises cut deep. Imagine the bitterness when a man you helped build turns around and carves at your legacy with a reckless tongue. In private, Jay-Z would later admit that Kanye's betrayal was not just professional. It felt like family tearing itself apart, a brother's disloyalty laid bare for the world to dissect. And what of Donald Trump? Their feud played out on a different stage, one where politics collided with personal pride. Jay-Z had once spoken of hope and progress, but when Trump retweeted a comparison between his own tenure and Jay-Z's album legacy, the gloves came off. Jay-Z called the White House utterly embarrassing, and in return, Trump took to social media to jab at Jay-Z's community and credibility. This was no mere celebrity squabble. It was a collision of two titans, one wielding political power, the other cultural clout. For Jay-Z, who fought to lift his people through art and enterprise, Trump's jabs were not just insults. They were betrayal of values he spent decades upholding. Not all betrayals come in the form of verses or tweets. Some arrive with handshakes behind closed doors, signed contracts that conceal the poison within. Larry Jackson, once a trusted ally in the industry, learned this the hard way. Their relationship soured after years of creative partnership, ending abruptly without the promised 530 album that fans still mourn today. In the corridors of Roc Nation, whispers spoke of secrets, unfinished business, and the bitter taste of trust broken by ambition. When Jay-Z named Larry among those he hates most, it was not about money. It was about loyalty, trampled under the boots of ego and pride. And then, dear viewers, the whispers of an even darker scandal emerge. The sexual assault lawsuit that shadowed Jay-Z's otherwise spotless image. Though he vehemently denied the allegations and no criminal charges followed, the civil suit scraped at old scars. For a man who cultivated an image of a devoted husband and father, the public speculation stung deeper than any courtroom battle. The question lingers, does he hate the accuser, or does he hate the version of himself the world dared to believe existed? As this hidden web of grudges begins to unravel, one thing becomes clear. Jay-Z's empire is built not just on beats and bars, but on silent wars fought in the shadows. For every sold-out tour and champagne toast, there were sleepless nights where the faces of these five haunted his dreams. And when he finally named them, Nas, Kanye West, Donald Trump, Larry Jackson, and the ghost of an accusation that threatened his family, he forced the world to see the cracks behind the platinum smile. As our story ascends toward its fevered climax, the echoes of Jay-Z's grudges grow louder, spilling out from the whispered corners of studios and boardrooms into the blinding glare of the public stage. Picture it. Headlines splashed across tabloids, rap radio stations dissecting every bar, social media ablaze with speculation. When Nas and Jay-Z's lyrical battle raged in the early 2000s, it was more than just a rivalry. It was a brutal, public bloodletting. ether cut so deep that fans questioned whether Jay-Z's crown could survive the blow. Back and forth they went, each verse a dagger, each performance a reminder that hip-hop was never just entertainment. It was war, and the scars would linger long after the beats faded. Yet the Nas feud, fierce as it was, mellowed over time. But Kanye West, Kanye, the heartbreak that colored their falling out was more personal, more venomous than any diss track could convey. When Kanye stood on stage ranting that Jay-Z had abandoned him, refusing to bring his wife and child to visit after Kim's robbery, the betrayal felt biblical. Two brothers divided not by money, but by pride and ego. Publicly they smiled at charity galas, but behind closed doors, the air turned icy. The media replayed Kanye's rants like a Greek chorus, reminding Jay-Z that sometimes family wounds cut far deeper than lyrical ones. And then there was Donald Trump, whose presidency turned the Carter household into an ideological battleground. Jay-Z, who had rapped about hustling against a system rigged to keep men like him in the gutter, found himself sparring with the most powerful man in the world on Twitter. Each insult was a slap to the legacy he had fought to build, not just for himself, but for every kid in Brooklyn who saw in him the proof that you could be born with nothing and rise to touch the sky. Trump's jabs about African-American unemployment, his thinly veiled dog whistles, they were more than petty tweets. They were a declaration that the game Jay-Z thought he'd mastered still had players who bent the rules as they pleased. But dear viewers, the most chilling conflicts are the ones that never make headlines. Take Larry Jackson, a trusted consigliere turned ghost. Behind the closed doors of boardrooms and studio sessions, Jackson was the man who made deals hum, who read the fine print when others celebrated. But trust is a fragile currency, and in 2018, it shattered. Jackson walked out of Jay-Z's life, and with him went a vault of secrets. The rumored 530 album, a project fans still believe would have redefined Jay-Z's legacy, vanished with a handshake never delivered. Insiders say the fallout was so bitter that even old friends avoided the topic for fear of reopening wounds that still bled ink. Yet perhaps the most soul-crushing blows come not from rivals, but from shadows within. The 2021 civil suit alleging sexual assault was an earthquake for the Carters. Though Jay-Z stood firm in his denial and the world largely sided with him, the mere suggestion that he could betray his family's trust shook the empire's foundation. Beyoncé, the queen at his side, endured the rumors with a stoic grace that only fueled speculation. Was there more than met the eye? Jay-Z's hatred, some say, is not just for the accuser, but for the poison that doubt dripped into his household. A man who once ruled every narrative found himself battling one he could not outspit or outspend. As the years rolled by, the media relished each public jab, every cold shoulder at award shows, every subtle lyric that hinted at old grudges still festering. The fans, of course, devoured the drama. Every clapback from Nas, every meltdown from Kanye, every tweet from Trump replayed like verses in an endless cipher. The king of hip-hop, the billionaire with champagne on ice, found himself forced to relive these betrayals, each one a scratch on his gold-plated legacy. And now, at 56, Jay-Z has done the unthinkable, given these grudges a name, a shape, a place in history. No longer buried beneath metaphors and veiled bars, they stand naked before the world. As we edge closer to the heart of this story, we must ask ourselves, what does it mean for a man like Jay-Z to confess the people he hates most? Does it weaken the fortress he built, or does it make him more human? A king whose crown never shielded him from the daggers of those he once called brother, friend, or foe. As we approach the heart of this revelation, one truth emerges through the haze of grudges and headlines. Even for a man like Jay-Z, there comes a moment when hate must meet its reckoning. In the quiet corridors of his Manhattan penthouse, or the sun-drenched rooms of his Hamptons retreat, the whispers of these names must have echoed for years. Nas, Kanye, Trump, Larry Jackson, the shadow of an accusation that threatened everything. But what happens when a man grows older, richer in wisdom than in platinum plaques? Perhaps, when the empire is secure and the children are grown, even a king must lay down his armor. In the last few years, those close to Jay-Z speak of moments that hint at a softening. Take Nas, for instance. The two once traded verses so venomous that fans believed they could never stand in the same room again. Yet years later, they did more than bury the hatchet. They toasted to new beginnings, even recording together, proving that time can heal where pride once ruled. Jay-Z himself once admitted in a rare interview that Nas's lyrical assault had made him sharper, stronger, more determined to protect what was his. In that admission lies a glimmer of grace, an understanding that sometimes an enemy is merely a mirror reflecting your deepest fears. And then there is Kanye, the brother turned betrayer, the genius who spiraled in the public eye. For years, they circled each other like wounded lions, each too proud to bow. But when Kanye's struggles with mental health became impossible to ignore, even Jay-Z could not keep the walls up forever. Whispers suggest that behind closed doors, he reached out, not as a mogul, but as the big brother who once promised to guide the brash kid from Chicago. It is said that their wives, Beyoncé and Kim, played quiet peacemakers, nudging these men to see each other's scars not as weapons, but as wounds needing salve. Donald Trump remains the outlier, a feud too public, too ideological to dissolve over a glass of champagne. Yet even here, some say Jay-Z found his peace, letting the pettiness of social media jabs drift away like smoke in the night. After all, the real battle was never just with Trump. It was with a system that for generations had silenced voices like his. In choosing to name Trump among the five, Jay-Z made it clear. Some wounds you forgive, others you outlive. Larry Jackson's name, too, lingers in the air, a ghost from boardrooms where handshakes were once worth millions. Time has a way of blunting even the sharpest betrayals. Friends whisper that Jay-Z has no interest in reopening that chapter. His empire has grown beyond the need for old confidants who turned their backs. And as for the civil suit, the darkest stain on his otherwise pristine legacy, Jay-Z has clung to his innocence, standing by his wife and children through storms of speculation. Those closest to him say his greatest forgiveness was for himself. The ability to look in the mirror and believe that mistakes do not define the man, only the lessons he carries forward. So, dear viewers, as Jay-Z stands on the far side of 50, the revelation of his most hated five is not just a list of grudges, but a testament to the fragility that wealth and fame cannot erase. It is a reminder that even kings are haunted by the shadows they try to bury. And yet, there is something achingly human in watching him name those shadows aloud. As if by giving them breath, he might finally let them go. Dear esteemed viewers, as our story draws to its final curtain, I ask you to pause and sit with this truth that lingers like a last note in an empty concert hall. What does it mean for a man as powerful, as untouchable as Jay-Z, to admit the names that poisoned his peace for decades? Is it an act of weakness, or the greatest testament to a heart still capable of feeling the wounds of betrayal? When he finally spoke those names, Nas, Kanye West, Donald Trump, Larry Jackson, and the ghost of a scandal that threatened his family, he did not just settle old scores. He opened a door for us all to see the man behind the myth, the boy from Marcy Projects who never forgot what it felt like to be cornered by distrust. Some say forgiveness is the gift we give ourselves, but is that ever truly enough? Imagine carrying the weight of envy, backstabbing, and broken brotherhood across every stage, every Grammy, every champagne toast at a billionaire's table. Jay-Z built an empire on loyalty, Rockefeller, Roc Nation, an endless dynasty of talent nurtured under his watchful eye. And yet, loyalty is the currency most easily stolen when power and ego collide. Tonight, we stand witness to a man who learned that even kings bleed when their closest allies draw the knife. So, dear viewers, I leave you with this question. If Jay-Z, a man who turned the pain of the streets into poetry that shook the world, can still harbor hate, after all these years, what does that say about the rest of us? Can we truly let go of the names that haunt our sleep? Do we ever really forgive those who cut us so deeply? Or do we simply learn to live with the scars, weaving them into the verses of our own survival? Perhaps in the end, the true crown lies not in platinum albums or billion-dollar deals, but in the quiet courage to name the ghosts and let them drift into the night. Behind the glittering lights and roaring crowds, even a king like Jay-Z must sit alone with his regrets. And maybe that is the lesson he leaves us tonight. That no amount of fame or fortune can cleanse the soul of its darkest grudges, but honesty can set it free. Thank you, dear esteemed viewers, for stepping into this confession with me. May we all find the strength to name our own 5 and the grace to forgive, or at least to live with the truth that some wounds were never meant to heal completely.